Hello and welcome back to OtakuDaiKun. I'm Dai, a VTuber who's been around for years now. My channel's split between waifu stuff and Type Moon stuff, but for today we'll see those two collide. You see, I love Aoko Aozaki from Witch on the Holy Night. It's a shame though, since my favorite part about her, this outfit, only appears for a brief while. I was super stoked when Fate Grand Order announced a collaboration with Holy Night, and its initial trailer even showed this outfit. When the actual event dropped though, we discovered Type Moon completely redesigned the outfit in a way that, to me, is not nearly as appealing. If you like it, that's great, but I miss the OG and worry that her new design will overshadow the one I fell in love with. You know how fan artists are, chasing the latest trends. Well, I'm stubborn. For the most part, I make my own models using VROID Studio, and figured the best way to preserve my favorite outfit would be to recreate it as a cosplay for my VTuber model. Admittedly, I'm not the artist I would like to be, but I'm sure my knowledge in VROID will help some of you start your own journey. Here's my tutorial, or walkthrough with commentary, on how I went about cosplaying Aoko in VROID. So I decided to use dai-chan Alter as our model, since she's got nice long hair like Aoko. She's starting off in her undies, just like a good character creator. Now, clothing in VROID is all about textures. You have a ton of preset clothing models to choose from, and you then modify them by altering the texture file that goes on top. Our goal here is to find designs that closely fit the shape of Aoko's outfit. We've got some torn jean shorts. That could be useful. I'm gonna choose Edit Texture, then export that texture for later. It's not really the right shape though. Let's keep looking. There are a lot of pants to choose from, so what I'm considering is the belt shape and if there's an existing denim texture to work with. I suck at making entirely new things, but I know how to mod existing stuff to fit what I need. For instance, all of the pants models are designed to ride up over her navel. Fuck that shit, gotta pull it down. Right now I'm taking the default pants and blocking out where I need to trim it. The first thing to do is export the base texture so I can play with it in Photoshop for higher quality. Next we'll be making a guide or template. The pants should technically start where the belt ends, so I'm just gonna erase everything above my desired waistline. See? You can even notice her thong rising up above the pant line. Hell yeah! Another critical detail are the tears in her jeans. I'm looking at my reference picture and painting some general shapes to mark where the rips will go. Once that's done, I'll go ahead and export that layer as a separate file. Let's look at some shoes. I'm not all that excited about footwear, so hopefully I can find something that's close enough by default. Minus the shoelaces, this pair should work fine. Once again, I'll go ahead and export the base layer before messing with it. It's really easy to just erase the shoelaces from the top. My other concerns are the studs between the bottom laces. I'll use the brush tool to mark the locations and relative size we'll need for later. Then we'll export this template as another PNG image file. I suspect her top is going to be the most difficult. None of the basic shirts are going to work, so I look through dresses instead. By default, it removes her pants, but we can fix that later. This dress right here seems to fit the overall shape profile, sleeveless with a choker on top. Despite this, it's way too detailed, and I'll need a more generic texture to use as a base. Starting with a sleeveless dress is going to work better. I'll start off adjusting the model's parameters on the right to get the right shape. Again, start by exporting the base texture. Thankfully, it's really easy to just erase the bow up front. The trickier part is trimming away at the sleeve so it runs flush against the collar. Technically, I only have to do one side, as I plan to mirror it in Photoshop. Trimming both just helps me visualize what the end product will be. I probably should have shortened Alter's hair for a bit, since it's hard to see in the back. I've got to trim the back part as well. Note that VROID lets you draw right on top of the model or directly onto the texture image. This really helps when you aren't sure where parts of the texture correspond to the actual model. By far, my least favorite part is the seam line, where you have to make sure the left and right sides line up perfectly. Luckily, things don't have to be perfect at this stage, though. When it comes to the skirt, I need to be more careful. Luckily, we have both a front and back view of Aoko, letting me plot out where the drapes are. It's all squiggly along the seams, so I try to replicate that at least a little bit here. Once I draw out the basic silhouette, I can erase all the crap below it. I'm more or less satisfied with one side, so I export the layer as a new image. Using another layer placed below the base layer, I draw the black undershirt just above her navel. There's also some black that rises up from below her shoulder blades. On that same layer, I add the black lining to her skirt. I'm mainly just trying to map out its thickness. When that's done, I export all this underlayer as a separate file from the base dress. On yet another new layer, above the base layer, I've got to draw out some extra details. There's that line running down the center. On that same layer, I block out where I want her choker to be. This is a pain in the ass, as it has 3 different seam points. The front is all one section, but the backside is split in half. All these pieces need to line up perfectly, and that can be hard even using the wireframe guide, since the resolution is pretty low. The front of her choker has the yin-yang symbol, so I try to draw its basic shape here. Last up are the rings at the top and bottom of her dress. Each one has a stud of sorts that I mark out too. When I'm satisfied with that, I export the top layer as a separate image. So that's a total of 4 images. One for the base texture without any modifications, one for the trim of the dress, another for the bottom elements, and a final one for the top details. It's easy to forget, but Aoko's also got those nice detailed sleeves. The original VROID studio lacked the ability to do this, but now we can combine multiple outfit templates together. For our purposes, we'll be adding a bodysuit and trimming all but the sleeves we want. The tricky part here is making the ruffled patterns on each end. I'll be fixing this up later on. The sleeves also have 2 metal bands apiece. I'll use another layer to mark them out. This means we'll have 3 images for the sleeves: a base, the template on where to cut, and the bands. Cleaning all of this up took me a while. While I was looking at Aoko's ass, I noticed the backside of her pants had some tears too, so I went back and marked them out. It's been annoying to swap between the pants and dress, so I take this chance to add the pants as a template nested within the dress. Since we already exported the textures, importing them on the new pants was easy. I finally decided to hide Alter's hair so I could do a better job mapping out her back. After making the adjustment, I just save over the previous texture with this new one. You can always finesse it as much as you want right here, if you think it'll help down the road. Before wrapping this step up, I took one more look through the default pants and found a nice texture for jeans. This will actually look a lot better than the previous texture I had, so I go ahead and export that too. Now, it's time we dive heavily into Photoshop. All those textures I exported were just 2D pictures we can paint over, and Photoshop has way better tools than VROID. Let's start with the pans. I go ahead and open up each of those texture files separately, then I copy and paste them into a single document as layers. Using the jeans texture as the new base, I desaturate its layer. While they looked like decent enough blue jeans, I can mix in the actual color used in Aoko's art. Just eyedrop the color you want and flood a new layer with it. Different layer blending modes can let that color bleed into the shading from the monochrome pans. The result's a bit dark, so I crank up the brightness. When I get the look I want, I flatten the monochrome and color layers into a single layer. Next, it's time to reference our template and adjust the waistline more cleanly than before. I like the belt loop and pockets, so rather than just delete them, I want to shrink them down to the appropriate size. It might look a bit smushed here, but that won't be the case when it's stretched out over the model. I was originally going to use these torn shorts to create Aoko's tears, but then I realized I could just grab those details directly from the official art. To get a higher resolution image, I fed Aoko through Sankaku Complex's AI upscaler. It's kinda sloppy, but I usually like the results. With the pen tool, I draw a selection around each of the torn parts and paste them in my main document. Luckily, these tears are meant to look sloppy, so I don't have to be too meticulous with my cutouts. This gives me 5 unique tear shapes I can shrink and rotate to where my guides were. I complete the look by adding a very subtle drop shadow to them. Now we're gonna grab Aoko's belt buckle. I figured I could wing this step, but it winds up biting me later. Either way, I ultimately wind up grabbing just the buckle and making the rest of the belt on my own. I just eyedropped the belt color into a rectangle and finished it up with a gradient and outline. I realized the buckle needs to be a lot smaller to fit. Since the pants already had their own belt loops, I just deleted those sections from my belt. With all that done, I can finally export this project as a single PNG image. That said, be sure to hang on to the Photoshop document in case you need to make changes later on. We're on to the shoes next. Like before, I open up each of the textures and lay them on top of each other in a document. I desaturate the base layer and blend it with the color from Aoko's actual shoes. I wind up trying out tons of colors, blend modes, and brightnesses before finally settling on one. I should have accounted for the fact that these shoes have a white stripe running across the front. I have no choice but to use my old pal, the clone stamp tool, to cover them up. For the studs, I grab one off Aoko's shoes and paste it repeatedly over the spots I previously marked out. After finishing one row, I duplicate and flip it onto the other side. As you can see, the front of the shoe doesn't quite match, so I use the pen tool to draw out that shape as closely as I can. The last thing I do is cut out those pesky shoelaces more cleanly. Save that bad boy, and it's on to the shirt. Much to my dismay, my recording software didn't capture this section, but thankfully it's much more of the same. Assemble all the dress textures into one document, use the pen tool to carve out the right shape, draw in details like the choker, and export it as a single image. With round 1 of Photoshop done, it's time to see how our new textures look. Back in VROID Studio, I just import the new textures over the old ones. Right off the bat, I noticed some mistakes on the dress. The choker was poorly shaped, and there were some floating bands around the arms. This reminded me that I hadn't yet done the sleeves either. The pants looked fine, except my belt buckle was nowhere to be found. I honestly shouldn't have winged that part. If you try to draw your own buckle in VROID, you'll notice it's in a strange place, split in the center. In order to fix that, I export another template layer. Returning to the dress, I found that her choker wasn't properly aligned, and I also forgot to trim the sides, hence why they were floating around near her arms. In addition to exporting textures, you can also export the wireframe guide, which helps me address these issues. With that extra knowledge, it's time for round 2 of Photoshop. That wireframe guide lets me know where I need to cut the left and right sides of her choker. For the pants, I use my new template to drag apart the 2 halves of her buckle. I can only hope these match up in the actual model. I then make her sleeves using the same process as the pants and dress. With the pen tool, I carve out the bumpy pattern needed for each end. It's easy enough for the side nearest her shoulder, but the wrist shape makes the other side more difficult. I noticed the bands around her sleeves look the same as the back of her choker, so I just copy and paste that over here. Just don't forget to mirror the image at the end. Back in VROID, the modifications I made mostly turned out well. The dress and sleeves worked great, except for the choker, which still needs to be reshaped. The pants weren't as lucky. The buckle was still too close together, so that took another round too. Once you're finally satisfied with the clothing textures, there's one more step, which is adjusting the skin mask. Basically, when you lay clothing over the top of a nude body, those are often 2 separate models. It's possible that, when they move, the bottom skin layer will pop through the clothing, which looks really unprofessional. It's called clipping, and the easiest way to fix it is to just not have any skin beneath the clothing. For example, if the character's legs are entirely covered by pants, you can just erase all the skin beneath those pants, since nobody's ever gonna see it. A skin mask, then, is just a black and white layer that lets you paint where the skin should and shouldn't appear. Obviously, we need alter shoulders, hands, stomach, back, and face. The rest, however, can be blacked out. One final time, I go through the outfit parameters to shape them how I want them. Only thing left to do is test the model in motion to see if any skin still manages to clip through the clothing. I don't notice anything, do you?
After exporting your model, it's now possible to use it in various applications, such as VRM Posing Desktop or VC Face, which I use for webcam and motion tracking. Aoko is so damn stylish. A more talented artist would know how to manually draw in more folds and wrinkles. I still struggle with that, but hopefully you've learned about what goes into creating 3D VTuber models with VROID. Live 2D is a completely different beast altogether, but I enjoy 3D since it lets me move more freely. Which style do you prefer? Also, take a look at my $20 membership tier. It unlocks for you the chance to contact me at any time regarding your VROID questions, or my advice on everything throughout the video making process, from voice recording to editing, and all the other tedious things that go into this process. That said, if your questions are short, feel free to ask them in the comments below. Catch you later, sweetie.
Thanks for watching.
If you enjoy this channel, help us grow by liking, commenting, sharing the video, subscribing to OtakuDaiKun, and,
most of all, smashing that notification bell so you don't miss out on all our anime lore, discussions, and Let's Play content.
You can support us directly through Patreon, Subscribestar, or a YouTube membership, all of which come with benefits like spicy exclusive vids and early access.
As always, celebrate your fandom. I want to give a special shout out to all my $10 and up supporters: Video Gamer 75, Dante Pendragon, Lunarworks, Stephen Elak, Samuel Gersten, The Nonchalant Ostrich, Otaku Mom, Jens Bauman, Mystic Samurai 1983, Lord Ormagoden, Free Brick, Alexis Yukio Gomez Yamato, Link Pendrago, Observer Bellis, James Hewitt, Uncanny EXP, Zamas Autonomous, Yuki Eidos, Scout, Crow Kalem, Sal Soto, Tristan Riggin, Major, Meifu Mado, Caitlin P, Sogai CH, Vladimirovna, The Taz 96, Jonathan Padua, Kengo X77, Hersha of E-Rated Hands, Alester Bernadotte, and Akakaze Yume. Thank you all so much.